Hello friends, I am Bevan Stanley. I will talk about two main theories in developmental biology: reaction diffusion by Alan Turing and positional information by Louis Wolpert. First, we will look into what they are individually and then see how, as opposed to the popular view of mutual exclusivity of these theories, they could possibly interact. So, the question that developmental biologist tries to address is how the structures and shapes of organisms arise. So, let us go through these theories individually and see how they try to address this question. Let us get started with the reaction diffusion theory. So, the question that Alan Turing tried to ask was a little bit more specific. He asked how a periodic pattern could arise from nothing. For starters, he differentiated chemical morphogenesis, what we now call as pattern formation, from mechanical morphogenesis, which involves movement and shape change of cells. For the purpose of the model, he left out the mechanical part and instead went ahead with pattern formation. This, as you would see later, was the case with Wolpert as well. Turing had come up with 6 different models in his paper. In all these models, diffusion takes up the center stage. We will only look into the actuator inhibitor model, which also happens to be the one, according to Turing, which explains the biological system better. The model has two molecules, an actuator and an inhibitor. Activator enhances its own production and that of the inhibitor. The inhibitor, on the other hand, inhibits the activator production. These molecules can diffuse freely across the field, albeit with different rates. To begin with, we have a baseline level of two molecules as represented in the graph. Due to the random molecular movement, molecular fluctuations in the concentrations are bound to happen. Even a small rise in the actuator level leads to its autoactivation, pushing up the concentration. Since the actuator activates inhibitor, its level also rises at that point. The inhibitor diffuses faster than the activator. This has two consequences. Firstly, at the position of the peak, inhibitor levels fail to accumulate sufficiently to repress the activator, whose positive feedback is able to stabilize its own high levels. Secondly, the increase in inhibitor level of neighboring cells prevents levels of the activator from growing, thus creating a zone on either side of the first peak where no new peaks can form. However, beyond these regions of lateral inhibition, new peaks can form. So, the whole system dynamically changes until a regular array of peaks and valleys is formed across the whole field of cells. Although it looks like a convincing theory, it was not dealt without criticism. The first and foremost problem was that all this diffusion bringing about pattern was counterintuitive. Diffusion reduces pattern, like how a drop of ink in water fades off, and hence disorder giving rise to order was something even hardcore physicists could not digest. Then the rigidity of the pattern's wavelength for a given set of parameter values seems to be at odds with the ability of developmental patterns to adjust to natural variability or even dramatic experimental perturbation of embryo cells. Added to this, earlier exploration concluded that RD was rather sensitive to noise or initial conditions and thus too unreliable for developmental patterning. Later, however, Greyer and Meinhardt lucidly developed its terminology, implications, and variations and showed that the regulation of pattern size was easily achievable. And finally, a discovery that seemed to make RD models unnecessary. This was the surprising results in Drosophila that the periodic segments of the larva, an apparently archetypal periodic pattern for which RD might have been expected to be involved, are actually built up not by a single global periodic patterning process, but rather by a stepwise subdivision of the embryo by a multiplication of overlapping gradients. Thus, each segment or stripe of gene expression is controlled and positioned independently of the others. Next up, we have a few examples of RD systems from mouse embryo. The patterning of rugae or the mucosal ridges on the roof of hard palate follows an activator inhibitor model. The parrot shelf grows in size and a series of expression stripes develops, which determine where each rugae will form. The spacing of these stripes is self-controlled by activator-inhibitor pair of FGF and SHH. In the limb-birds, the position of fused digits are created as a Turing pattern driven by a feedback loop between Wnt and BMP signaling and the transcription factor SOX9. This is equivalent to a substrate depletion Turing model rather than an activator-inhibitor model. Next, the distinction between left and right side of the body is driven or at least enhanced by an RD system comprising of nodal and lefty, which creates broad gradients of morphogen concentration across the field. Having spent some time with RD, our next candidate is positional information by Wolpert. Wolpert asked a slightly different question. He asked how a more complex pattern could be determined from simple prior asymmetries. Or rather, how does one come up with a pattern for the French flag? To answer the question, we begin with a specific type of prior asymmetry, one which involves an increasing or decreasing gradient of a variable, usually a morphogen. Now, the value of this variable at each point encodes the positional information. The cells also need a mechanism to measure this variable. At this point, we define two thresholds, T1 and T2, which divides the gradient into three parts. The next most important step is interpretation. The cells can use this positional information and choose a fate for themselves depending on their relative position. And there you have the French flag. The fact is, you can use the same positional information to get the Belgium flag or the Ireland flag because of the interpretation step. But if we want to replicate the periodic patterns as in RT, the number of thresholds required shoots up. In this case, it is 7. Simply put, in the PI, pre-pattern is decoupled from the cell fate by introducing an interpretation step, thereby allowing any arbitrary pattern, whether periodic or non-periodic. An intro into PI won't be complete without discussing the molecular patterning in the early Drosophila embryo. It is generally represented as a one-dimensional system along the anterior-posterior axis. Initial asymmetries set in place by maternal mRNA localization result in broad monotonic gradients of morphogen across the field, which directly regulate gap genes. Differences in morphogen concentrations at each position of the field provide distinct inputs to the gap gene network, which through various cross-regulatory interactions convert these smooth spatial differences into more discrete molecular patterns, the various colored domains. This more complex molecular pattern of gap genes then provide the positional information for the next level of gene regulation, the segment polarity genes, which are expressed as a series of 7 stripes. Please note the diagram is intentionally schematic in order to illustrate the concept, and therefore not all relevant genes have been included. I have just presented Turing's RD and Wolpert's PI as two opposing ideas and as alternative mechanisms for a given pattern. But why should that be the case? Can't they work together? With Turing providing the benefits of symmetry breaking and self-organized regularity, and PI being a flexible way to specify regional references and to tinker with pattern formation during evolution. Indeed, in many cases, it might be impossible to reliably build a pattern using only one approach or the other. The authors of the paper being discussed propose 3 distinct modes by which the two systems can collaborate to build relevant biological patterns. First one of these modes being RD acting upstream of PI. Please note the RD is represented by the green line and PI by the French flag pattern. Here, a morphogen Turing pair spontaneously makes a periodic pattern. Each subregion corresponding to a local monotonic gradient, here represented by the dashed process, can then serve as positional information for subsequent interpretation by cells. The left-right patterning earlier discussed under RD is an example. Left or right is not a strictly binary question. One can be slightly off the axis towards right or be at the extreme right. Hence, the half wavelength gradient created by RD could theoretically be subsequently interpreted into multiple positional values. But why mode 1 can't be a purely PI system? Well, because This mode does not require an upstream asymmetry specified, for example, by maternal bias. Moving on, we come across the second possible mode, which involves cells integrating information from both systems simultaneously but independently. Here we have the current models of digit specification in the vertebrate limb, for example. An RD system produces a periodic pattern along the anterior posterior axis, which will distinguish digits from interdigits. Independently of this periodic pattern, the PA gradient is created, which allows the initially equivalent digits, peaks of the green RD pattern, to adopt different identities, probably through controlling growth rates rather than directly controlling cell fates. Please note the schematic is that of the bird limb. Finally, we have RD acting downstream of PI. A periodic RD pattern develops but under the influence of a PI gradient. In the example, the red positions create a shorter wavelength while the blue regions create longer wavelength. This mode of interaction appears to be important in the mouse limb bud as the periodically patterned digits play out distally. Mutants of distal Hox genes and LY3 support this theory as they show supernumerary digital structures that are short and distally restricted and exhibit branching of digits, both of which suggest that the wavelength is not controlled sufficiently along the proximo-distal axis in these mutants, which results in abnormal digital morphologies. I have discussed two big theories in developmental biology and a theoretical framework for their interaction. Let's hope in the near future, developmental biology would be blessed with an unifying theory which enumerates the building blocks of both chemical and mechanical morphogenesis. Thank you for listening.